The Islam faith has always led to many empires being established under its name. Many of these empires included notable names such as the Umayyad Caliphate and the Ottoman Empire. But many people don't know about the first empire, the Rashidun Caliphate, and its first four caliphs. Its first caliph being named Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was very notable in the Islam community as he was friends with Prophet Muhammad, and he was one of the first people in the world to convert to Islam. Abu Bakr also had a very good reputation for being a good person, as in one instance he freed slaves that converted to Islam. He followed Prophet Muhammad to Medina and was one of his closest advisors, until disaster struck. Prophet Muhammad died of illness and the Islam community was in a state of panic. Even though Muhammad made it clear that he still followed human laws, many people in the Islam community were still coping that Muhammad had passed. And even worse, Muhammad had not specified who should take his role or what type of government should be installed after his death. This led to a split in the Islam community. One group that converted back to their old ways and rejected Islam, and one community supported by Abu Bakr that continued to trust in the new faith and marched under the banner of Islam. Luckily for Abu Bakr, many people in the Islam community, such as Umar, supported his claim to being the successor for Muhammad, and he officially became the first caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate. Although there wouldn't be peace for long, as many tribes in Arabia had rebelled from the empire, saying that they had a personal pact with Muhammad and they had no right to serve under the new empire, which led to the Ridda Wars. These rebellions challenged the Islam faith, and it was very important for Abu Bakr to put down or subside these rebellions before they became too big and overthrew him. Luckily for Abu Bakr, he gathered all the armies under the banner of jihad and divided his army into 11 corps, which would be very beneficial as these corps would go out and subdue each of the different tribes. One by one, each of the tribe was subdued either diplomatically or by force, and just like that, the Rashidun Caliphate had secured their position in the Arabian Peninsula. Despite the Caliph just being established, this empire faced many issues. This nation suffered a lot of political instability from people wanting to be the next caliph, but there was also a bigger problem: the nation's security. You see, there was an empire in the north called the Sassanid Empire. The Sassanid Empire is one of the many Persian empires, which is considered to be the biggest of them all, and it had many border conflicts with the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine and Sassanids had already fought in a war before, but it was clear that a second war was about to begin, which it eventually did. The Byzantine-Sassanian War of 602 to 628 was a very bloody conflict for both sides, but more importantly for the Rashidun Caliphate, it weakened both sides. The Rashidun Caliphate, seeing an opportunity to exploit the situation and to expand their influence, sent Khalid ibn al-Walid, their best commander, into Iraq in 633 to invade the Sassanid Empire. And something to note: Khalid wasn't your average commander. Khalid was more like the Napoleon of his time. Khalid was more like the Scipio the Younger of Islam. This man was truly the greatest commander of his time. And just like that, Khalid and his troops had invaded Iraq and were going up the Euphrates River, participating in many battles. Despite commanders from the Caliph, Khalid was very brutal in his fighting. He also killed many prisoners of war and was overall just a brutal commander. But he did not lose a single battle and reached all the way to the town of Firaz on the border of the Byzantine and Sassanid Empire. The Battle of Firaz was gruesome and brutal, but led to a Rashidun victory against the Sassanid and Byzantine forces. Wait, what? Byzantine? When did Byzantine join the war? Well, it turns out while Khalid was invading Iraq, more Muslim armies had invaded the Byzantine Empire to take control of its southern provinces near the Holy Land. Once Khalid was done in Iraq, he quickly went south to go assist in the invasion of Syria, participating in many major battles. The biggest being the Battle of Yarmouk, which lasted over 6 days and led to a strategic victory for the Rashidun Caliphate and for Khalid. Despite the many victories, disaster would struck back home in the empire. Abu Bakr would die of natural causes, and he needed someone to succeed him. Many candidates then appeared, but the one with the most support was Umar, the one who got Abu Bakr in power in the first place. And this notable reputation led Umar to become the next caliph of the Rashidun Caliphate. The first thing Umar did when he became caliph was reinforcing his influence and grip on the government. He also hated Khalid, which is why, whenever he became caliph, he instantly demoted him. And no one really knows why. The reason is highly debated, but many people think it's because people were glorifying Khalid instead of God. But now, Muslim forces were being reinforced, and they were under a new leader in the Middle East to continue their campaign in Syria. And in 637 CE, Jerusalem peacefully surrendered to the Rashidun forces. And again, after again, the Rashidun Caliphate won every single battle and had even taken the Sassanid capital. Even though all these were great victories for the Muslims, Umar still had some worry. Umar was convinced by one of his military commanders named Amr ibn al-Ayas to invade Egypt so Rashidun could cut off Byzantine naval assaults. The Rashidun Caliphate had started their attack on Egypt and had won the Battle of Heliopolis in 640 CE, and 2 years after, in 642 CE, Egypt would be fully taken. Unfortunately for Umar, in 644 CE, he was stabbed in the back repeatedly by a Persian slave while praying. Even though Umar died pretty early into his political career, he did many great things for the Rashidun Caliphate. Umar is also known for his kindness to the people he conquered, and a lot more. Right before Umar's death, he got together a 6-person council to elect the next caliph. This 6-person council would then choose Uthman ibn Affan as the next caliph. Uthman was also very known in the Muslim community, as he was technically Muhammad's son-in-law. Upon becoming caliph, Uthman implemented many domestic policies into the caliphate. Uthman was also a big supporter of business and trade growth between the empire. Uthman did definitely not have as many military successes as Umar, as really during his reign, the Rashidun Caliphate only took Cyprus, Crete, and parts of northern Africa. But what Uthman was good at was getting that war booty. Although Uthman would face severe backlash from the Muslim community and the empire in general. Uthman was accused of nepotism, which is when you put relatives or family members into political positions. His reputation was also dragged in the dirt by false accusations of blasphemy, but the final nail in the coffin was the economic downturn that would happen during his reign. During his reign, inflation would skyrocket. And while all this was happening, Uthman would make enemies with a familiar face, Amr ibn al-As, the governor and conqueror of Egypt. The man who convinced Umar to invade Egypt in the first place was now starting a rebellion against the caliph. Uthman had found Amr corrupt and incompetent, which made Amr angry. And just like that, many rebellious groups had been marching on Medina and rebellious thoughts were rising in Egypt. Rebel leaders had approached Uthman and laid out their complaints. Uthman promised to fix all these complaints and the rebel leaders left. But they claimed they intercepted a letter that said that Uthman was going to kill all the rebel leaders once they came back later. Uthman claimed this was forged, but it didn't help, as not long after, angry renegades would climb over his fence and kill him while he was reading the Quran in his house. The assassination of the caliph was very shocking to the whole caliphate and pushed it to the brink of civil war. Uthman had started many charitable acts in the empire and had standardized the Quran, which revolutionized Islam even to this day. Uthman is considered a great caliph by many, but the next caliph wasn't so lucky. Ali was a cousin of Prophet Muhammad, which made him very notable in the Muslim community. He had participated in many of the early battles that the Rashidun Caliphate had faced. He was also an advisor to Umar, but as an actual caliph, how did he do? Well, first thing he did was fire a bunch of corrupt governors, with some accepting their fate, but some being defiant, which caused more divide in the empire. He also had to deal with the governor of Syria, who demanded justice for the death of his cousin Uthman. There were now two parties in the country. One party that demanded justice for the death of Uthman, and one who supported Ali that said the death of Uthman was just. This would lead to a bloody civil war, called the First Fitna. As for Ali, well, in 661 CE, he was assassinated while doing a prayer. How else would you think he would have died? But in all seriousness, the Rashidun Caliphate didn't last for very long, but without it, the Islam community would likely not be here today. And even though many of the four caliphs had many faults, They were all very good and very influential, which means these four caliphs wrote the history of Islam for time to come.